Hello, everyone. At the outset, a very warm welcome to everybody. And this is the first edition of Green Tea with Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers. And our focus today is on sustainable mobility. Now, this is a theme that the Indian government and the industry have been closely focusing on for the last 5 to 6 years, and it's gathered more steam after the COP26 announcements by the Prime Minister. We have seen electrification of vehicles accelerating in India, a strong push towards ethanol. Ethanol blending targets have been preponed from 2030 to 2025, and the government is already saying that we will see at least maybe 20 to 25% blending in select petrol pumps across the country from next year onwards. To talk about this all, we have a very special guest with us today, Vikram Kirloskar, who is the Chairman and Managing Director of Kirloskar Systems and Vice Chairman of Toyota Kirloskar Motor. He has been a President of the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers during 2013 and 2015, and more recently, he was the President of Confederation of Indian Industry. One of the most prominent and leading industry voices here in the country. Mr. Kirloskar, thank you very much for joining us. We would be speaking about sustainable mobility with a special emphasis on alternate fuels and electric mobility. And the government has often been saying that we have to be technology agnostic. We have to let the industry find its own path when it comes to sustainable mobility. And it's often said by the industry that EVs may not be the only answer. For India, it will be a mix of green options when it comes to sustainable mobility. Let me begin by asking you, as we see this adverse impact of climate change and it becomes increasingly more evident, what do you think the automotive sector, first of all, needs to do to mitigate carbon emissions, which are a key contributor to climate change?
I think the automotive sector has to look at it in a holistic view, not just the car that we make, it's how we manufacture it, right from the start of the raw material to the recycling and the whole circular economy. So we have to look at the entire thing to make sure that we actually reduce carbon. I think for India, two very important issues we have to consider. One is the reduction of carbon itself, and the second, of course, is in the view of current situations like Ukraine, other things like that going on, how we can be self-dependent on energy. I think both are very, very important. Unfortunately, self-dependent on energy also means use of more coal, but there's also more renewable. But things like biofuels, ethanol are also coming up. So I think we have to look at the whole situation holistically. As far as Toyota is concerned, Toyota took a stand about 5, 6 years ago, and they announced a global approach and global targets, 2050 targets, to make Toyota a zero carbon company, not only in the vehicles, but also in the entire circular economy part of it, that is production, etc., as well as teaching the society how to go to zero carbon. And we have worked hard on that. So I think holistic approach is most important. Focus on reduction of carbon, focus on reduction of or increase of renewable energy. I think that is the key to the whole situation.
Looking at the carbon emission targets set by the government, how do you see electrification taking off in the country? I was just comparing numbers, and I think we had vehicle retails of somewhere like 3.11 lakhs for the whole of last calendar year. And already this year, in the first 5 to 6 months, that number has been crossed, and we have about 3.3 lakh electric vehicles. So how do you see electrification taking off in the backdrop of some of the COP26 announcements made by the Prime Minister?
I think electrification is certainly going to take off. Couple of reasons. One is tailpipe emission. People perceive it as being extremely clean, and certainly depending on the energy source, it's extremely clean. Also, performance of electric vehicles is quite extraordinary. I've experienced driving electric vehicles. I use one sometimes at home, a Lexus UX 300, and the performance is just fantastic. It's unbelievable power. So I think there's a combination of both performance, ease of operation, but I think we have to look at, again, like I said earlier, what is our energy source? Look at it holistically. Look at the other alternatives like ethanol. Look at can we use energy from solar for charging vehicles? I think all these things are important, and we have to look at the whole situation. I think electric vehicles will do very well as we go ahead, faster than what is expected.
Right. And other than electrification, towards attaining carbon reduction targets and also for our energy security, as we've seen crude oil prices surging above the 110 per barrel mark, do you think alternate fuels have a big role to play? And which alternate fuels would these be?
I think ethanol is certainly going to have a big play in the situation as we go ahead. I've seen the example of Brazil, where they have done the calculation on carbon absorption from growth of sugarcane and food to production of ethanol and to the hybrid ethanol vehicles, which are showing significantly lower overall carbon content than pure electric vehicles in Brazil. I think we have to look at what is suitable for each country. A country like Norway, which has 100% hydropower,
Mm.
electric vehicle makes fantastic sense. And if you see the sales of cars in Norway, it's mostly all electric. In India, we will have to look at our combination of availability of fuels, a combination of whether it's solar or whether it's ethanol or whether it's coal-based or whether it's oil, and look for the most optimum solution which will benefit the country. I think that's our key objective.
Right. And and as we end, how would you like to sum up when it comes to our roadmap for sustainable mobility? A lot has been said about ethanol fuels. How is the industry ready when it comes to making engines, making vehicles, complying with these fuel standards in the next few years? And any thoughts that you would finally like to leave us with?
I think I'll talk a little more about my own company because on what we are doing on this. We've started work on reduction of carbon many years ago, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago. Our manufacturing is almost a net carbon zero based manufacturing, using all renewable energy. We've gone to zero fresh water, almost zero fresh water, almost zero VOCs, almost zero plastics. So a whole, and as well as a very high level of recyclability in our product. And we're setting up recyclable product centers around the country. So that's the production part of it, and we are pushing this down to the dealers as well as to the suppliers. Low water use in the dealership for washing cars. So we're trying to do it all across and teaching
Right.
children also how to do a circular economy. So that's one part of it. On the product side, we recently announced a fairly significant investment in electrification and alternate technology products, and we are starting right from the drivetrain of the vehicles.
Mm.
And when we start production of our vehicles, they'll be fully localized vehicles which will use some of these alternate fuels, which will definitely reduce our carbon content in our product line significantly in the years to come.
Mm.
That's our target.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kirloskar, for joining us, giving us your thoughts about the roadmap for sustainable mobility in India. Let's see what kind of penetration we have for electric vehicles and alternate fuel vehicles in India by 2030.